Hi there, Joe Krulder from the History Department, willing to share with you insights into remembering the readings from your textbook. Hint, college professors and instructors actually expect you to do this, to remember all the hundreds, if not thousands of pages that you are assigned during the course of the semester. Many of them will attempt to keep you honest by delivering quizzes, which, by the way, are not torture devices, but a means by which college instructors assess whether or not you get what it is you were assigned to read. Now, reading happens in every course, whether it be history, English, graphics design, or nursing. Gaining the skill of reading retention will undoubtedly lead to better grades, and who knows, even graduate school. But before we begin, remember that at any time you get lost during the viewing of this video, just stop, rewind, watch it again. This is the magic of video, and it's also available to you 24/7, 365, as long as the internet keeps working. So, how to take reading notes from a textbook. The first question we need to ask ourselves, something we should do before we read anything, is what is the purpose? Why am I reading this? And I believe, and a good chunk of you will respond because I know my college professor is going to ask questions about the reading in the form of a quiz, and this is probably true. But hopefully some of you may have responded because this is the quickest way that a professor passes on information, and maybe the quickest way I can actually learn something. Now, both of these responses are correct. Textbooks, however, represent a tremendous amount of data, which is why professors have you buy them from your friendly bookstore. They anticipate that you'll read them and perhaps come close to understanding what it is they want you to glean from all that data. Your anxiety comes from the fact that your textbooks do possess an avalanche of data, and it's not humanly possible to remember, retain, regurgitate, and any other possible reads that may exist. It's just way too much data. But then you're missing the point of a textbook altogether. It's true, textbooks possess a tremendous amount of information. But, however, it is that data, as in a lot, that gives you a way to fight back, a way for you to understand just what a textbook is trying to do. In history, a textbook serves as a beginning point, a juncture where you, the individual, are introduced to the mountains of data held within. A textbook is nothing more than a beginning point, a place from which to leap deeper into the complex understandings of your subject. Textbooks may have a lot of information within them, but what they have in quantity, they kind of lack in quality. In other words, textbooks are made for scanning, for reference, for checking stuff, for finding something quickly before you dive into other written works seeking deeper explanations. Use this, ladies and gentlemen, to your advantage. So returning to the original question, what is the purpose? Why am I reading this? Hopefully by now, you'll know that the purpose of a textbook is to deliver tremendous amounts of information, and that you're reading it so as to answer questions that a professor may ask you, but you're also reading it to scan, to place a beginning of your research, a place from which you dig deeper. So great, cool, awesome. Let's move on. The next step. With the purpose determined and known, it is time to build an infrastructure to fulfill these needs, and this is remarkably easy, and it should only take a couple of minutes to set up. So first, you will need to create a dialectical journal. Dialectical. It's just a fancy way of saying a journal with two sides, a left side and a right. One side for the textbook, one side for you. Simple, eh? So you can do this in a number of ways. You can do this by hand, by doing a handwritten kind of textbook, or you can use a handy-dandy computer that has word processing program like Microsoft Word. Oh, so let's do the latter. So I've opened up the program, and I'm going to set up my dialectical journal. And to do this, you just click on the Insert tab, way up there, and you'll click on Table. Hey, look at that. And then you'll come down here to Insert Table, and number of columns you'll make 2, left side and the right side. Now the number of rows, Well, because this is a textbook, and a textbook has a lot of stuff, I'm going to make a lot of rows. Let's say 50. Okay? And each row is going to be an entry, and this will make much more sense as we kind of go on. For now, we have a table. 2 columns. See here? 2 columns. And there's 50 rows. Now, dialectical journals are 2-sided. Here we have a left side. Here we have a right side. And what separates them is a line smack down the middle of the page. And that's going to come in very handy when you use reading notes to study, but more on that later in the video. So let's say now we're going to be reading chapter 10 of your book. So we'll write it here. Chapter 10, Eric Foner, and the name of the book, Give Me Liberty. Right? And if you really want to be correct, you'll italicize that. Okay. So anything amazing that Eric Foner writes in chapter 10, we're going to type it in here. So this is the book side. Over here is the me side. Me. My thoughts. My reaction. My questions. And again, this is going to come in very, very handy when it's time for you to study. So anything Foner writes is going to go in here. Anything that you write is going to go on the right side. Okay? So far, so good? Okay, so now we've got chapter 10 of the book open. First, I'm going to type in the title of the chapter, then all the major headings in the chapter, and then maybe the subsections thereof. So instead of typing that all in, I've already done that, but I don't want to bore you with my bad typing, so I'm just going to paste it in here from before. So we see that we have Democracy in America. That is the name of the chapter. The triumph of democracy is one of the major headings, as is nationalism and its discontents. Then another major heading, nation, section, and party, and so on and so on. Now, within the triumph of democracy, if we come back up here, we have property and democracy, the subsections, the Dorr War, Tocqueville on democracy, the information revolution, the limits of democracy, a racial democracy, race, and class. Why do I do this? That's a very good question. And the answer deserves a very good one. So if, for example, I highlight this and I copy it and I come down here, I know that in this entry, whatever I type in, the triumph of democracy, property and democracy, I know that what I type in, property and democracy, is a subsection of the triumph of democracy. So then I can know that democracy triumphs because of this thing called property. And I might want to comment on that here. That is property really connected to democracy? That's one of my questions that I might ask. And it's a very good question to ask. So just by reading the subsection, property and democracy, of the major heading, the triumph of democracy, we can come to understand a little bit about what it is in the major chapter, Democracy in America. Get it? Kinda? Sorta? Now, what we have done here, really, is part of the reading process, trying to understand and prepare ourselves for what we are about to read. So we already wrote a question: is property really connected to democracy? And we wrote that question just looking at the headings. We haven't even read any of that section, property and democracy, which we're going to do right now. But we're going to do it, since I don't have a book in front of me, I'll bring up the page that I scanned in. And there it is, Chapter 10, Democracy in America. The Triumph of Democracy, the major heading, and Property and Democracy, the subheading. You can read with me, I guess. The market revolution and territorial expansion were intimately connected with a third central element of American freedom, political democracy. The challenge to property qualifications for voting, begun during the American Revolution, reached its culmination in the early 19th century. Not a single state that entered the Union after the original 13 required ownership of property to vote. Well, there it is, folks. You just answered the question that you wrote down. I'm going to copy that, come down back to my page, and I'm going to boom. And then also, I'm going to put this here. This is something I'm in the habit of doing. You don't have to do it. Phoner, and then the page from which it came from. So if we go back and we take a look at the page number 354, I'm going to go back to my writings here, page 354. This way, if I actually have this entry, what I'm doing now is making an entry. And so here's my entry. Not a single state that entered the Union after the original 13 required ownership of property to vote. That's on page 354 of Phoner's book, Give Me Liberty. Okay, so is property really connected to democracy? The answer is yes. But now I'm going to write my own quiz question. Okay? Quiz question is, how many states after the original 13 required ownership of property to vote? And of course the answer is going to be not a single state that entered the Union after the original 13 required ownership of property to vote. This is good to do because remember, this line down the middle will fold the paper in half, and you can quiz yourself. You can quiz your group members or your study buddy. How many states after the original 13 required ownership of property to vote? And hopefully they'll say 0, because that would be the right answer. And so now is the time for me, moi, to tell you a true story. And that true story involves a class called Management 303. I took a Management 303 course at the California State University of Chico. It was part of my museum administration certification. So let's see if we can get to that document here. Oh, there it is, Reading Notes, Management 303, Chapter 4. And as I'm showing you how I outlined the headings and the subsections, I want to let you know that I was in a class, one of 74 students in this class. Most of the students who take Management 303 are business majors. So it was odd for me, humanities guy, history guy, museum guy, to be taking this course. I was kind of out of my element, so to speak. So here we have the outlines as I showed you before. This is Chapter 4, and I come down here and you'll see that I have why are ethics a hot topic in boards and businesses across the country, and these are my questions. These are my quiz questions to myself. What is the definition of ethics? How do ethical dilemmas arise in corporate management? Human behavior falls into 3 categories with the domain of ethics, sandwiched in the middle. What 2 domains are at the extremes? This allowed me to score an A in a management class, a class of which I was out of my element. By the way, I was the only student in this management class who would get an A in this course. It was a tough course. I would even make myself a couple of questions, multiple choice. The utilitarian approach for ethical decision making is based on, and then I would have B, the greatest good for the greatest number. So these are ways in which you can create your own questions, form your own study groups, share your questions back and forth before you take a quiz. I guarantee you'll get an A. Really, truly, honestly. Thank you for looking at how to write and taking reading notes from a textbook. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, email me. You know where that is. Thanks.